Hey there, welcome to the Impatient Entrepreneur Podcast, a show where we hear from entrepreneurs and business owners who are chomping at the bit to make their mark on the world. I'm your host, Lauren Quidar Cockrell. Now, let's hurry up and get to the good stuff. Hey everyone, I have a special treat for you today. Well, at least it's a special treat for me. I believe it'll be a special treat for you too. I am here with one of my dearest friends, Jennifer Bley Sweeny. We have been close buds for 25 years, I think is the math.
Yep.
Something along those lines. Yep. And we have continued to be close through all of our journeys from high school golf to early adulthood to parenthood and now running businesses, not alongside each other, but simultaneously. And it is a special joy in my life to get to do life with you. And so thank you for agreeing to come on my podcast with me. You are hands down the funniest person I know in real life. And so
big shoes to fill. Thanks, Lauren.
If this podcast is not funny, it's because I just jinxed it right there. But anyway, Jennifer is an accomplished attorney. She is definitely my on my speed dial for all my business law types of questions, even so it's like we're on a secret handshake retainer with each other. But anyway, Jennifer, Jen, Bley, all the nicknames. Thank you for being here today. Will you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, please?
I'm Jennifer Sweeny. I'm an employment lawyer in Fort Worth, and I work with one other gentleman, Todd Blumenfeld, who's another famous celebrity of Fort Worth. At least we like to think so. And together we help businesses of all sizes across a number of industries with business and personnel issues. I'm the employment lawyer in the group, and I deal with anything having to do with employees other than taxes and ERISA.
Well, I've had the opportunity to work alongside you two in behind the scenes efforts for a shared client. And I can tell that you really care deeply about your clients and you're always looking out for their best interests. You shoot it straight, but you're fun to be around. And I know anybody would be lucky to have you. So,
Lauren, your PR is showing. I need you as my hype man. Introduce everybody.
I'm always your hype man.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get into it. First things first, and I know the first question definitely, you called me and said, are you sure you want me on your podcast? And I was like, yes, because I want everyone to see all different sides of this. So Jen, would you say that you're an impatient entrepreneur?
Well, I can definitely be impatient, and I do fit the definition of an entrepreneur, but I do not consider myself an impatient entrepreneur. As an employment lawyer, my business comes from relationships of trust through long-term relationships and friendships. And I've grown up with my clients, right? When I started and I was a young lawyer, they were coming up the ranks in a business, or they had plans to start their own business. So for me, I had to be patient. I had to wait my time. I had to develop my skills. And so now that I officially can call myself an expert in my field, my peers, my comrades who I came up with, they are now in decision-making roles. And so impatience probably would not have served me.
Sure. No, I think that's fair. I think for both of us, our fields are long game. I'm almost exclusively referral only. Also, I'm trying to change that a little bit, to potentially have more control over all that, although control is an illusion. But is there anything that you're impatient to get out there, like products or services wise? Like, is there anything that you're impatient about in your business?
I mean, no. I really like the balance that we've created. Todd and I, we really believe the best way to serve our clients is to be patient. So much of what we do, I deal with the government. You got to be patient with the government. That is a different beast. As far as putting something out there, or what somebody should know about us, that I'm impatient to a message to get out. I think what we're seeing a lot of is interpersonal conflict in the workplace. That's something that keeps arising and seems to be at the origin of everything I do. And so something I'm impatient about, impatient's not the right word, excited about, is really looking at that from a different angle and trying to help my clients navigate interpersonal conflict at the source before it festers into litigation and expensive departures and retention issues and those sorts of things.
Do you have kind of like an ideal customer avatar, like a manufacturing business that's X many of employees? Like, is there like a sweet spot for you, or for your clients, like a Jen? Hiring a Jen as your legal counsel maybe doesn't make as much sense at some point, or does it? Like, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, who's a good fit for you?
If you're looking for someone to handle a big piece of complex litigation or get in the courtroom with thousands of documents, that's not what we do. Yeah, that wouldn't be our skill set. We don't really help on the plaintiff side. So on the when an employee has an issue with an employer, we aren't set up to really help that employee at all. We are set up to help businesses of any size, really. I mean, it's more about the problem than the size of the business, right? I mean, some enormous corporation could be dealing with union organizing, and that's the same beast whether you have 15 employees or 1,500 employees. And so, one of the big things Todd and I look for when we get to pick our clients, because we get to pick our clients. We just want people with integrity. We want people who make good choices. And for me, I like people who care about their employees. And so I don't think that we are pigeonholed into any industry or any, no, take that back. I can't really help you with anything having to do with railway workers or airlines. That's a separate statute altogether. Not that that's entertaining carve out, but so there's certain industries that we can't. It's hard for us to touch.
Sure.
And obviously, we're somewhat limited by our geographical limitations that are put on our law licenses, right?
Sure.
I mean, I can practice in Texas, but I can't go over to Louisiana and practice. So Texas-based clients or people with federal issues across the country.
Gotcha. So one thing I wanted to ask you also, if you're a patient entrepreneur, are you open to sharing? You've a unique and enviable business structure, I would say, just from our sidebar chats. Are you open to sharing, you've, in my opinion, you're currently walking that tightrope of lifestyle with the remuneration you're seeking for the for the family support and all that. Like, I don't know if you're open to sharing kind of how you've structured things for yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm an employment lawyer with no employees. I know how much time entrepreneurs spend on employees. And because I work with my clients on their employees, I use all of that energy for them, leaving really very little for us to employ our own staff. And so Todd and I, we do everything. He manages the financials. I do some of the marketing. We are our own legal assistants. And it allows us to weather storms, right? I mean, not having to make payroll is a game changer.
Yep.
And so, if we have a slow month or when COVID hit, we weren't in the same position as everybody else, right? I mean, we were able to think for ourselves and independently make decisions that worked for us. And so when we need a team, when we have a daunting task in front of us, we get to partner with the colleagues that we respect the most. We identify good lawyers who do what we do not do, and use a network of really good lawyers to create a team that we don't have to pay for, right?
Right.
And that's been really helpful.
And how have you decided what enough looks like? And that's, in heavy quotation marks, because I feel like you've really decided, like, here are my clients, here's what I'm going to take on. I'm not necessarily going to overextend myself or get out in front of my skis. Like, I feel like you've taken a really thoughtful, modern approach to deciding what makes sense for you as a human being, a fully formed human being with many things on her plate.
Yeah, and I think Todd and I do a really good job of that together, right? We will powwow when ever a case comes in or a client wants to work with us, and we'll talk about what that means for our firm, what that means for us, and whether or not it's right. I mean, we have a case that came in this morning, and Todd and I are discussing, well, what does that look like? Is it too much for us? And we get to ask ourselves that question, which is a big reason why we did this. What was your question? Answer it already?
You did, but
listening to myself talk.
No, it's just I liked where you're going, but it was also so I think that's how you decide if you're going to take something on. But do you have like an internal governor that tells yourself like, this is enough for me? Like, I know what I need to do. I'm meeting that threshold. Like, are you doing it formally, informally? Is it intuitive? Is it externalized? How are you managing that?
That's a really interesting question to ask a lawyer, because we are all raised as baby lawyers to bill as many hours as humanly possible per week. I mean, in a week that I didn't bill 40 hours felt like a failure, right? And now for me to have to bill 40 hours, I have to really, I would have to clients, and I don't want to do that. I want to do the clients need without having overbill them or have them pay me to do a bunch. There's no 5 lawyer meetings, right? I mean, you're not going to sit down with me, and I'm not going to bring 4 associates who we're all going to bill you, and so because of, it's hard for me to wrap my head around billing less hours in a week. And so I don't know if I ever feel like it's enough, but the billable hour is really helpful, right? I mean, I can always quantify the work I do. And so do I have an internal governor of what's enough? No. The voices in my head tell me it's never enough. But because of what I do, I have to, like you, I work for every hour I get paid for. I mean, if I'm not working, I'm not getting paid. Right. And so I have my internal governor is the time I want to spend with my kids. Yeah. The time I need for myself, and to make sure that that is included in how I do my scheduling is really important.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to share any more about that, but it's something I've watched you and inspires me as far as, you make time to be with your kids. They're all day or every dayers like mine, but not all the time. You do have adventures with them. You don't richly schedule them just for the sake of your calendar. I see you spend quality time with them. I see you spending quality time with yourself, taking care of your mind and your body. And so I think, when, again, going back to, are you sure you want me on your podcast? I'm like, hell yeah. Like, you can set an example for people who their only external stimuli are, hustle culture, grind culture, 90 hours a week, or it didn't happen, kids and 45 different things a week and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like, you're really good about keeping it manageable and keeping it appropriate for your family. And, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, but I want to put a plug in for you having such a strong spirit and backbone and doing what's right for you.
Wow. Well, thank you. That is sweet that you think that about me. I think that there are a lot of people who would tell me I'd need better boundaries, saying yes to a few things that overextend me. But, on the whole, I think it's just really prioritizing the most important people in my life, which is my family. And I don't serve my clients at all if we aren't at our best. Todd and I both agree, to best serve our clients, we need to have balance. And I think our clients benefit a lot from our balance. Right. Yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup. So no, and you've taught me a lot about that. You have this skill set too, my friend. We talk about it a lot. It's like, what are you doing for yourself this week, Lauren? Yep. I actually asked my team that now. We have a daily stand-up, and I noticed that they weren't. It seemed like they were both a little burned out, not necessarily from the work, but just lots on their plates. And I was like, okay, we need to have a self-care section of this daily stand-up. Like, what are you doing nice for yourself today? How are you taking care of yourself today? Like, it doesn't have to be a huge thing. It can be just walking outside and getting some vitamin D for 5 minutes, But you gotta take care of yourself too. Well, I actually heard a good quote, and it kind of fits. We're golfers. You told everybody. I'm not sure if your listeners truly know how illustrious of a golf career you had, But I was listening to Brian Harman, who just won the British Open, and he was talking, he said, when it comes to his profession, do what makes you lose track of time. And I thought that was really important. I mean, it's not like I lose track of time in every aspect of my work, but I certainly find myself losing track of time in some of it. And then also having a few hobbies or things that we do that allow us to lose track of time.
Right.
Have you ever, been counting the minutes in a back massage? Not ever. Not one time. Totally lost. You're like, wait, an hour?
Unless that bladder starts to fill up, then I was like, oh,
That's
no.
Oh, yeah, that is a curveball for sure.
But yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's like, I think it's a gift too, to just allow yourself the time and space to find something that inspires your curiosity. I think as we get older and older, there's less and less of that. We get into our careers, we get into our niches, we get into our roles, and there's not as much time to just go gangbusters on the pyramids,
yeah,
or the Titanic. Like little fifth grade Lauren was all about the Titanic and ancient Egypt, and just could not get enough.
I didn't know that about you. That was a little before my time. I'm so glad to know that about you.
Yeah, about 5 years before your time. So, but it's not as cool to nerd out on stuff. But now that I have my little pocket computer I walk around with everywhere, I mean, just every question, every curiosity, I'm like, what movie were they in? What is this? What is that? What does that mean?
And it's nice to indulge those little moments and go down those little wormholes. And sometimes I'm thinking I'm wasting time, but at the same time, if I'm curious about it,
right,
use your brain. It's all good.
Yeah, learn something new. Like
even if it's absolutely worthless information.
Living rent free in my bed, in my head. Excuse me, not my bed.
Oh, again, a different podcast.
Side note: Jen and I have talked a couple times about maybe we need an anonymous podcast about our love of romantic literature. Stay tuned. Or don't.
I guess we just broke anonymity right there, though.
Yeah, well.
So if you see a podcast, an anonymous one about rom-coms and smut, you'll know it's us.
Or is it?
Or is it? Right.
I've been accused of actually multiple anonymous social media accounts.
I believe that. Is one about grammar?
No. There's one there's a fashion one too, which is hilarious. I'm like, oh, you don't know me very well.
I can see you having strong comments on grammar. I can see you.
I do.
Being a grammar troll.
Less and less now, as with the advent of text culture and all that.
That's true.
But there are some that are still triggering. Are you reading or listening to anything right now that's kind of pouring into you or inspiring that curiosity or helping you grow as a person?
My husband and I are pretty obsessed with a podcast. It's a history podcast that Wonder Lab puts out called American History Tellers and History Daily. We're obsessed. The topics range from U.S. presidents to foreign wars to domestic atrocities, and it's done in a really entertaining way. And so, I don't know, I think it just gives us this unique perspective on the world around us. I think it sheds light on problem solving and the problems we face, the small ones, the big ones. But there's nothing better than looking at a problem with the benefit of hindsight. And that's what I love about history, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can sit there and be like, oh, we should have seen that coming.
Yeah.
But, and looking at problems with the benefit of hindsight, I think helps us evaluate the problems we have now. And so for me, I deal with the government. I deal with laws and from time to time, domestic atrocities, right? I think history serves me as well as, any other form of information I could be seeking.
100%. Yeah. I think understanding our past equips us to handle the future for sure. We don't want to be making same mistakes over again.
Well, and in what we do, there's so much history in every law that's written. Every law is a bunch of people sitting around fighting over it, right? What we see that turns into law started as a very different document that was molded through lobbying and politics and, compromise, you hope.
Yeah.
And so and there's so much history there into everything that we deal with on a daily basis. So I think that's kind of been how we've been satisfying our curiosity as of late.
Well, I think one of the most fascinating aspects of content like that is seeing the unintended consequences. There's always we've got these intentions, right, wrong, or indifferent, but then it's the unintended consequences that have lasting repercussions. And that's something that I'm sure you, as well as I, we really, when we're preparing a client or we're working through content or things like that, we're asking questions that help ensure, as best to our ability, to mitigate those unintended consequences. We really want to kind of look at it from as many angles as possible and not just be order takers. Like someone might want to do something, but we're like, okay, well, let's look at, all of our audiences and all the outcomes that might arise from something like this. And, can you live with unintended consequences? What can we do to help shore that up?
A lot of what I do, I'm not the decision maker. I am presenting my clients recommendations with consequences. If you do this, these things could happen, right? I can never guarantee my client that a decision isn't going to get him sued.
Right.
People love to sue. The question is, do you have a great defense? Are you prepared for when that lawsuit comes, right? Do you have insurance to cover that lawsuit? So exactly, those unintended consequences. When you make a decision, I like to think of it, that's my job, is to tell you these consequences that you may not be aware of based on, my understanding of the law.
Right.
So.
Right.
Agreed.
Which is why, outside counsel, regardless of the profession, is so critical. Everyone's, trust the experts. You can only be an expert in so many things, unless you're just a total polymath of sorts. But most people aren't that. We're not all that fortunate, I guess. So yeah, experts are good.
There's a handful of things any lawyer can do, of course. Like, we all know how to read a contract. We all know, some basic constitutional law principles. But the practice of law has gotten really specialized. I mean, if you want an expert, you've got to go to a very specific expert. I don't touch tax law. I don't mess with divorces. There's certain things I'll never do. And I stay in my lane.
Yeah.
If it doesn't have to do with employees, I'm probably not your person. So yeah.
But employment is quite a large chunk of running a biz.
It is a large chunk. Yeah. If you have employees, then it is a large chunk of what you will need.
So I know you've had a couple irons in the fire over the past few years. Are you creating anything right now?
I like to think that I'm always creating a good reputation for myself. Nice. I think that so much of what we do, every time you go outside, anytime we live in Fort Worth. This is a tight-knit community. Your reputation, as my dad would say, is your most valuable asset.
Yep.
And so I think we always have to be creating is a good reputation for ourselves. But I think one of the things that I'd like to create next is a toolkit, not a literal toolkit, but a metaphorical toolkit, that I can better serve my clients. Like I said, I think interpersonal conflict seems to be at the core of a lot of the things that make their way to me as legal problems. And so trying to navigate and figure out the best way to serve my clients, to address that much earlier on, right? I mean, being a better listener, right? Being able to communicate better, gathering skills. I think that one of the things that people say that I never really understand is be yourself. I am constantly shopping around for what that means, right? I look at you all the time and think, I'm going to just straight up steal that. I like the way she does that. That's now part of my life.
Yeah.
And I think I like going around the world sampling people's skills in parenting. I see some parents sit down and say something to their kid. I'm writing that in my phone. I'm for sure stealing that.
Yeah.
That's in the toolkit. And I do that, in parenting, in work, there's no greater compliment than when you draft a contract and then a year later, the same lawyer sends you back a draft using language you drafted, right? Yes, you kind of stole my words, but what a compliment. And I'm going to do the same to you. If you draft a great contract and a paragraph in there makes total sense to me, that's probably going to end up in something I'm drafting later on.
Yep.
Add it to the toolkit.
Preach.
Yep.
Samesies.
I don't want to reinvent the wheel.
No.
There's lots of people who know what they're doing in lots of different things.
Work smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
Is there anything that's happened to you in business that like felt at the time, this is just the worst thing that is, if this feels terrible, but then it ultimately turned out to be the best?
I actually think there's two things.
Yeah.
The first is I had a colleague who I just absolutely respected. She was a mentor to me. Her name is Bridget Blinn, and we were at Canny Hangar together moons ago. And she got a good opportunity to move to Dallas. And I was devastated. You know, I was losing a friend, a confidant, a mentor. I was worried about what my work product would look like. And, you know, as she transitioned out, I transitioned into her role. And there is no chance I would be where I am today if she hadn't made her move.
Yeah.
And I got more responsibility. She, you know, continued to help me. That mentorship didn't stop just because we weren't in the same building. And so it really ended up being something very positive. And then the second is, you know, I was working for someone else at the time, and I represented a client I didn't respect. And I didn't have to break any rules of professional conduct, but it really nagged on my moral compass. And when Todd and I started our own firm, we had a long talk about really wanting to represent people with integrity. It really changed this mentality of, we need business, any business, let's make money, to we want business, but we want the right business because we want to be able to sleep at night, right? You know? And so I think while having to work for a client and having to put someone on the stand that might be perjuring themselves, you know, I didn't do it intentionally, but what I'm seeing isn't maybe the truth. You know, and at the time, golly, my tummy hurt, but now I'm looking back, and I think that had to happen for me to really be able to have the practice I want, and the clients I want.
100%. I can definitely resemble that, and I've had some times where, like, I don't know if this is a fit, you know, like my stomach hurts every time this person is calling. And I had a colleague say, like, Lauren, if your tummy is hurting every time they're calling, this is not, you know, that doesn't make them
not a good sign.
A bad person. I mean, maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but, you know, it's not necessarily an indictment on them, but don't work with someone who makes your stomach hurt. Like,
exactly.
Oh, I guess I am the boss. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
We have enough stress, you know, owning a business and making ends meet. We don't need to add on that kind of stress.
No. And, you know, ultimately it sucks all the air out of the room. And so you can't take on anybody else. You're just stuck. And so it's like, you got to release them back to the economy.
Well, and we take on other people's problems for a living. That is what we do. And if your problems make me question my ethics, you know, I don't want to do that.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. Got to keep it on the straight and narrow for sure. Down the fairway.
Yeah. Exactly. Down the fairway.
My dad always said when we were playing golf is, you made a whole other class of people in the fairway. Which is true.
That is a metaphor for life.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Although the scrappy fun people are in the rough.
That is true. And I've definitely served my nickel in the rough too.
Samesies.
It's just when it comes to our work, better to stay in the
fairway, please, in the light of day.
Yeah.
So I really like to ask this question of all people, but for the podcast, really want to hear from you, if you don't mind. Was there something about you when you're growing up that maybe you're criticized for or were told was a weakness in your personality, but really it's turned into your superpower?
Oh, Lauren, you know that is the case. I was thinking about, this is a great question. I don't know how many times I heard it. You always have to have the last word. That was something that, I mean, just pissed off my father so much. You know, you always have to last word. I think it was, you know, he would tell me, Jen, you keep that up, you're going to have 6 husbands, right? Just talk to people like that. And now I get paid to have the last word.
Yeah, you do.
You know? So,
yeah, you do.
And I've learned that not having the last word in and of itself can be the last word. My Andrew shared something from work yesterday to me, and I thought this was a great quote. Silence as violence. You know, sometimes saying absolutely nothing is the most effective tool. You know, when I counsel a lot of people on negotiating salaries. And one of the things I'll always tell people is once you get the answer, once they've responded to your request, the most powerful statement you can say is, you've given me so much to think about.
Oh, I like that.
And you leave, right? Because you want, and so the powerful last word, you know, so it is. probably got me into a lot of trouble growing up, and there's some teachers who probably still have my face on a dartboard. But with the proper buffing, it's been good for me.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of times, those personality traits when we're young end up sort of alluding to our futures, for sure.
For sure. And I don't think there's a bad character trait as a kid that, if used for good instead of evil, can't be a strength, right?
Yep.
I mean, the loud, rambunctious kid, has management written all over them.
Exactly.
If they do it,
we both have daughters the same age and sons the same age. And I'm sure when you look at your brilliant children, like I look at mine, I think, just whatever you are, be a good one.
Yeah. And I think a lot about, my kid, they are talkers. We come from a family of talkers. My husband and I, we are talkers. And I'm sure that will serve them well someday, But I keep thinking, guys, if you can be in sales, you can do anything, right? Like just, work on your people skills and figure out a way. My friends who are in sales do really well.
Yep.
And they always have a job if they, if they're willing to do it. So.
Yeah. Salespeople with integrity are well compensated.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting, in what we do, we're in sales.
Yep.
We sell the car, we repair the car, we maintain the car, we repo the car.
Yeah.
We have to do it all.
Yeah.
I think it's a unique relationship we have to develop.
Right.
With our clients using all the skills
all the skills.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, do you have any advice for our listeners that they can do like right now to make their businesses?
Well, right now, obviously your listeners could hire me, keep me on retainer.
Yes, please.
Obviously a smart move when dealing with personnel issues, but really, the thing that I think has helped me, and I'm sure it's helped you, obviously we talked a lot about cultivating relationships. Mm-hmm. Don't burn a bridge.
Yep.
Don't send the angry email. Don't flip that table in the meeting. Even if you're leaving, those people will be your colleagues someday in some capacity. No matter if you move to a foreign country, somehow, burning a bridge will negatively impact you. And I think you and I have both, I don't think we'd be here if we burned bridges with prior employees or prior colleagues. Don't disparage people you used to work with. I mean, it says more about you than it does about the person you're talking about, yes. I think.
Yes. I think, yeah. Concur. If in the moment when you're so angry and you just want to tear the building down to the studs, you got to walk away. You can't burn that bridge.
You got to walk away. You got to sleep on that email. You write it, get it all out there, and then you do not press send. Don't even put somebody in the to line.
Correct. Yes.
Just leave it there. Let it sit. You will never be as angry in the morning, and you'll realize the error of your ways. I mean, I'm fortunate that I have great former colleagues. I worked for 2 firms before starting my own, and those are people of integrity. I still talk to them. We still work together. They refer me business. I refer them business. And had I burned those bridges, there's no way what I'm doing now would be successful.
Yeah. Even if you live in a huge city, your industry is likely very small. And you gotta live with integrity for sure.
Well, and especially when it comes to disparaging people, I tell my clients, if somebody who's applying for a job says something really negative about where they used to work or people they used to work with, I think that's a really telltale sign of what's going to happen to you. 6 months down the road, they're going to be sitting in another chair saying the same things about you.
Yep.
It's not to say that people shouldn't have gripes about their workplace. Of course. I mean, if, and especially if you're being treated unfairly or unlawfully, speak up. But, but disparaging someone, just gossiping and blaming other people, especially openly, I think has really serious consequences in the workplace.
100%. Yeah. I've even had prospective clients come in and just, their whole intake was talking trash about somebody. And I'm like, and it wasn't germane to the topic. I thought, I can't work with me. We're going to break up or end our contract or whatever. And you're going to, my reputation is everything. So I've had to gracefully exit the chat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's great advice. Thank you. Okay. So if people take your advice and want to chat with you, where can people find you and schedule a consult?
Sure. Well, I am at Blumenfeld and Sweeny, and you can check out our website, blumenfeldandsweeny.com. Go to Lauren's website. She'll spell that out for you, and then you can find our website.
We'll have it in the show notes for sure.
Perfect. We could have probably thought that out better when we were selecting our domain name, but it is what it is. And we are aware that it does spell out BS. We lean into that. Yes. And then you can email me at jennifer@blumenfeldsweeny.com. That's the best way to get a hold of me. I think we were talking about time management. All of my hours are my clients' hours and mine, right? I can work on a Saturday morning. I could work on a Friday night, and I might be doing my own stuff at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. And so I think email is always the best way to get a hold of me.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I always learn something new from you, whether it's just a little chit chat on the way to drop off the kids or way home from dropping the kids off at school.
Yeah, or a book recommendation.
Yes. I feel very blessed to have you in my life as a friend and a dial-a lawyer and all the things. So thank you for sharing your time with us today.
Back at you. It was a real honor to be on your podcast. Thanks for having me, Lauren.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, I'll see you in the pickup line.
Thanks for listening to The Impatient Entrepreneur. Love the podcast? Be sure to share it with a friend or colleague or give us a 5-star review on Apple. You can also chat with us on Instagram or Facebook at The Impatient Entrepreneur Pod. Want to star on a future episode? Head over to theimpatiententrepreneur.pod.com to inquire. Thank you to the team at Quidar & Co. for believing in me and bringing this podcast to life. And thank you to Carson Childers for mixing and editing this episode. Can't wait to see you next time.